Hello everybody and welcome back. This channel has hit over 100 subscribers, so I'm very excited about that, and I thought it would be a good chance to make a celebration video. For this celebration video, I thought what better opportunity would I have to, other than now, to dive deeper into what yoga might mean to somebody and why they might come back to their mat regularly to practice. I'm very thrilled about this video because I have a bunch of wonderful Toronto local teachers who are able to add their perspective to this video as well. And before we transition into that, I just wanted to touch on what yoga means to me. In the most simplified terms, I think that yoga gives me the chance to reconnect with myself. Whether that's mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual, or on all those planes, it just gives me the space to be able to go internally and feel connected to myself. Another reason why I practice yoga regularly is that it gives me an opportunity to reflect and just to notice where I'm at. And I think that the more I practice, the more I notice that I'm able to maintain healthy habits. I'm able to break certain thinking patterns that I've had for a while. I'm able to really give myself some time to care for me, which I think ultimately comes from that connection to your higher consciousness, that feeling of practicing to be less reactive and to be more present. One of the most beautiful and wonderful things about yoga that I found is how it transitions to your reality. So your practice slowly starts to integrate into your daily life, and all the mindfulness and the breath work and the intentional movement, maybe working through certain challenges in the practice or learning how to be comfortable in stillness, all those things start to integrate into your daily life. And I think that's really one of the most beautiful gifts.
So my path to yoga wasn't really the straightest of paths. I took my first yoga class probably around the age of 19 or 20. I was working in theater at the time, and I just thought, oh, yoga is like, it was a trendy thing. It was a thing people were doing to, be calm, be zen. And I thought, I'll go try that. And without knowing what I was doing at all, I went to an Ashtanga primary class and just felt like I was gonna die the entire time. And also just very much felt like I didn't belong there. And that feeling really stuck with me. I left yoga at that point. I left that class at that point and thought, okay, maybe yoga's not really for me. And for a lot of years, I felt that way. I would maybe drop into a class here and there. I didn't really feel like it was right in my body when I would do it. I also had some, sticky feelings around like, what is this sort of spiritual exercise, cultural appropriation? What's going on here? So I really stayed away from it in a lot of ways. And then fast forward about a decade, I was now working in social work. I was working in the youth shelter system. And I started going to gentle yoga classes at my gym, just again, for sort of mental health, thinking this will be good for me, good for my mental health as I'm working in this very high stress environment. And then it was through those classes where, they were so gentle. They were the gentlest yoga classes I've ever been to. They were really aimed at seniors. But there was something really powerful just about being in that space, starting to connect breath and movement, and doing that in community with people, like this very gentle in and out of the inhale and exhale. That really started to unlock something for me. It made me start to realize that there was something more, to start to notice that connection between mind and body and breath, and that there was a state that we could shift. So then I started getting more curious. I started going to different classes. I started to develop my practice more. I still had a lot of these questions about what is this, what's underneath, what are the roots of this practice, which eventually led me into a teacher training and then several teacher trainings and eventually teaching. For me, ultimately, yoga is just the best way I've found to be human. It's just changed so much for me in my life. The way I relate to myself, the way I relate to others, the world, community, just to be able to show up and to see how much change is possible when we just make small little changes and we keep showing up for them. And that's really what I want to pass on in my teaching too. I want people to get curious and to just feel into what it means to live in a human body and live in this world. We don't have to have the answers. We just have to keep showing up.
Hi, I'm Chrys. I'm here to share with you a bit, kind of, I guess, why and I do yoga, I teach yoga, I practice yoga, I live kind of what I call a modern yogi life. And I found yoga when I was a teenager. And already from that I had a bit of mindfulness background from doing Kung Fu and spending a lot of time outside up in the north of Ontario, where you just kind of realize you're kind of present and in the moment. And what keeps me drawing back to the yoga practice is the ability to come back to yourself when you come to yoga. And yoga doesn't always mean going onto your yoga mat and doing a sweaty, vinyasa workout routine. That's a lot of kind of a bit of a misconception. That's kind of like a big aspect of the modern lens on the yoga practice, but it's really about coming back to the self and understanding the self. So understanding how you move and you sweat and you work out, or how you sit with yourself, how you can reflect upon yourself and understand things that are going on with yourself, how you can actually learn that you can get a bit more of a perspective on how you're operating in life than you think of. And often when we only focus on yoga on just the physical, we don't really kind of see and understand how the practice is actually designed about our mind and seeing our body as an extension of our mind. And so that, as I said, when we come to our moving practice, which is what we often really know well here in the West of yoga, right? We think about, it's about my body and it's about my physical health, but it's really about always coming back to the self and the mental health. And that's often when people are really practicing and really involved in the yoga practice, that's why they're coming back to, that's why they kind of make a precedent to make time for it once a week, 5 times a week. And sometimes when you don't do your yoga practice, or you don't have something, a ritual that you kind of come back to, it's hard at first to understand, why is that person always doing that thing? And it's because really I think we all find things like yoga or other rituals and practices that really kind of make us feel connected to ourselves and make us feel a little bit of a break from, what we're living through, what we're going through. So one of the biggest things, as I've mentioned a few times with yoga, is it gives us that ability to look at ourselves and step back at ourselves, right? Because rather than just moving, we're breathing and we're reflecting upon ourselves, which kind of makes it a little different than all the other kind of physical activities or other relaxation techniques where we just kind of bliss out rather than stay in a sense of attention of ourselves. And yeah, that always keeps me coming back. I've been practicing yoga for over 20 years now, and it's different every time. And that's one thing also I find that yoga opens you up to reminding yourself that each practice is different, each day is different, so that if you can remind yourself that, a lot of the stuff that seems kind of mundane actually gets a little bit, not super exciting, but you get more curious about the day-to-day rather than kind of in that kind of often locked dread or anxious of what you're living through and moving through.
My name is Shaneeka James. I have been teaching yoga since this April, so 2022 April. I graduated from I Am Yoga in 2020 of March, but I also went back to do my training at Kula Studio, which is the studio we're in right now, and I graduated that 200 hours in July. So yeah, I'm relatively new to teaching. I've taught mostly with seniors or older women, but I love it. It's definitely different from my own practice, my own physical practice. What led me to yoga was I was in school for community work, which is, it was a very hard, mentally and emotionally hard program. I dealt with a lot of marginalized communities and just a lot of capitalism and like government talk. So after school, every Wednesday, I joined the yoga club at George Brown College, and that really just got me through graduating. Like, it was just the 1 hour a week where I was very present, and when I was on the mat, I really didn't have to think about school, I didn't have to think about work, I didn't have to think about paying rent or my relationships. It was just like me on the mat, and it was probably only the 1 hour of physical activity I got within those last 2 years. So I fell in love with it then, and I decided to take a training. I took the training not necessarily thinking that I was going to teach, just wanted to learn more information about yoga, if I was doing the postures correctly. And I met a couple of people, which was nice, and we connected over astrology, which I'm really big into, like the planets and the zodiacs and crystal bowls. I feel like I'm rambling, but yeah, why yoga? I think it's a release. So when I'm stressed out, it helps me get all the energy out other than like journaling. Like, it's just like a physical release, and it is a mental release as well. I am very present on the mat, so anything that I'm working through mentally, I should say, through my day-to-day life, it helps me like push myself and persevere. It's a weird like mind-body connection, and also connection with like right here on the mat and outside of the world, if that makes any sense. But yeah, that's why yoga.
I first started practicing yoga when I was about 16 years old. I was playing soccer competitively, and it was some different way to get me out of my body and actually fully stretch, because funnily enough, as a yoga teacher now, I hated stretching when I was playing soccer. And my yoga practice just developed over the years. It was kind of an on and off thing. And then I moved to Australia when I was about 23. And had the opportunity to take a yoga teacher training in Bali. And it was kind of beautiful because I never thought I could be a yoga teacher because I was not flexible. I'm still not flexible. And I was always deterred from teaching because I thought I couldn't teach because I was not flexible. But what's great is I came in contact with this teacher in Australia, and she encouraged me to do the training, and it really changed my life, and it actually developed my meditation practice as well, because through my teacher training I learned that asana and the postures were just a small component of yoga, and we move and breathe to kind of be able to find that stillness, and I thought that was really beautiful. And my yoga practice developed even more when I was diagnosed with endometriosis, and I really needed to change my movement and exercise routine. And yoga was a really good way to get in touch with my body and really be able to listen to the needs of my body. And that's how I uncovered restorative. That's how I leaned into meditation. And these are practices that I still come back to whenever I'm experiencing pain, or I need to get out of my head, or I'm experiencing anxiety. And I just want to be able to share that with other people, because I think yoga can be a really great tool in our life.
I guess I've been thinking about two things in the last little while. I've been thinking about more things, but two things in the last little while. The first is, why yoga? That's one of the questions you asked me. And so I've been thinking about that. And beyond the obvious, why the physical practice of yoga, I think is really what the question is. And why do we keep coming back to the mat, right? Why do we keep coming back? And I think for me, what I've noticed, or what I've learned through my yoga practice, is that the physical aspect of yoga, for a lot of us, it's really the intro to understanding that there's something bigger. There's something bigger at play here, more than just the things that we get, the benefits, the stamina we build, the strength we build, the balance we build, the flexibility. Something brings us back here rather than going to a gym, or going on a run, or going on a bike, or swimming. And I think it's because we're able to find a deeper connection to ourselves through this practice. And that being said, it's like a pathway to learn about yourself, to understand yourself, and then to have the confidence to really show who you really are to the world outside. So I think that's really what brings me, at least for myself, that's really what brings me back to the mat time and time again. I'm able to kind of strip away all the things all the baggage that I like to think about, that I carry with me, things that I've built up over the years to either protect myself from the world, or to what I was taught from my family or from friends, or what I see or what I think. I'm able to kind of get away from those things and then really see myself, my true essence, who I am. I learned that on my mat, and then I can bring that to the world outside. And I think the other thing that I've been thinking about this week, because I had a few people ask me about this, is, as you know, I'm an Ashtanga teacher and an Ashtanga practitioner, and it's a repetitive practice. So I think these two questions kind of go hand in hand, or at least I see them that way. Is, you know, one student asked me, well, why do you do the same thing every time you come in on your mat? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, aren't you bored with that? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not bored with it. I think for me, I've learned through a repetitive practice, it's a lesson in impermanence. So the practice asks me to do the same thing. It doesn't change. Do these shapes in the same order every day. And again, beyond the things that I learned, I can see my progression and very, very quickly. I learned that it's me who changes every single time I show up on the mat. I'm different, right? And so every time I come here, the practice is different. And even though I'm doing the same thing, I get to see the many different faces of myself, the many different versions of myself, and learn to deal through that on my mat. And then I can then bring all the things that I've learned outside, and I can use those lessons, that positive, that I can change myself. I can do what I think is kind of like positive change, and I can reflect that outside because I've learned those things on my mat. And so as a student and as a teacher, when I hear other people that I talk to and I engage with, and they start to find these type of little magic through the practice, I get excited and I get inspired as a student as well. So it's nice when I have some of my students come up afterwards and they're like, you know, yoga means a lot more to me. I need my yoga practice. I'm like, I hear you. I know exactly what you mean. I need it too. So for me, that's what it's magical, quite magical.